Hey Gab, Facebook, YouTube, it's Kevin Newsom coming to you from Houston, Texas. And today I'm going to share my testimony about heaven. You know, as a believer, we are called upon to share our faith and our experiences with others. And there are many ways in which people can do this, and many topics they can discuss. The topic I'm here to discuss today, though, is something that you won't find many other places, and that is the subject of heaven or paradise or the afterlife. I've had two recent experiences in which I've had contact with loved ones who have passed away, and these experiences have changed my life forever. They have changed the way I look at death. They have changed the way that I grieve people who I care about when they die. And most importantly, they've changed the way in which I live my life. Now, my first contact with the afterlife occurred a couple of years ago when I encountered my dad, who had passed away in 2009 from cancer. And the experience was almost unbelievable and almost indescribable. So what I'll try to do in the next couple of minutes is describe what it was that I saw and what I felt and what I experienced. So a couple of years ago I was asleep and almost in between the sleep and waking stage. So I was coming out of a sleep and into a time of wakefulness. And I saw my dad, who had passed away several years ago, and he was standing outside of a mansion. It was a lovely home, truly lovely home. And the environment was much like you would see in a nice day here on earth, a sunny, a bright day, very beautiful day. And there was also a temperature, also a hot, cold feel. It was a crisp day, but it was warm as well. And I think one of the most notable aspects of this experience was the feeling I got at this place. Not only seeing my dad, who had passed away several years ago, but the overall vibe of this location was extremely happy. It was almost a state of euphoria. Now, what's interesting about the vibe issue is whenever I tell this story, people ask me, first off, were you sober? Were you under the influence of drugs or alcohol? And I was not. I was completely sober. But it is a funny question to get, because if anyone out there watching this video has ever used drugs or consumed alcohol to the point of drunkenness, any of those substances where you are very high, where you are very inebriated, yet under control, if you've ever felt that way, feeling so good from using any of these substances, that feeling is about 1/10 of the feeling I felt in paradise. It was truly incredible. So when you read the passages from the Bible where Christ talks about there will be no tears, no more pain, no more death, etc., etc., all of that is completely true, because those feelings are impossible in that realm. It is impossible to be sad or to cry or to be angry or vengeful or hurt in that place, wherever it is. It is truly impossible. The vibrations there in that paradise or heaven or whatever you want to call it are so high that it is literally impossible to feel those negative feelings that we experience here on earth. So whenever someone asks me the question of, well, were you high having that dream? I always say, no, I was completely sober. But being high does give some sort of context for just how good it feels in paradise. And that's also an important side point I want to make as well. Because of the intense feelings of that location, that dimension or paradise, a lot of people who have drinking or drug problems, you know, the common theory is to say, well, they're masking some other problem and using drugs or alcohol to cover it. I would venture to say, though, that people who have addictions such as drinking or drugs are subconsciously trying to attain that same feeling that we all had before we came here to this earth, to this dimension. In other words, they're trying to recreate that wonderful feeling we had in that place here in our bodies. And of course, as you well know, whenever you overuse drugs or alcohol, your body pays the price. It just cannot handle the constant abuse. So keeping that in mind, we should always approach addiction with compassion and not contempt or judgment, because in my estimation, a lot of these folks are just trying to attain something that we had before we came here to this reality. Now, another notable event that I witnessed was my dad had a mansion. He had a large house that he was in front of. We were both in front of, and I was speaking to him. And that lines up as well with the Gospels, with Christ discussing how there are many mansions in his Father's house, and that he would prepare a place for you, the believer. This matched up perfectly. Now, what was interesting at the time was there was another house, another mansion next door to my dad's, and I didn't understand that at first. It was right next door, and it was just as beautiful, maybe a little bit bigger, actually. And it wasn't until later, after I had awakened and had time to study and think about what my experience was, that I really determined that that would be my mom's mansion next door to him. And that leads me to my third observation about the experience. Our relationship, when I was having this experience with my dad, it was not one of father-son. There was no kind of authority like we have here on earth. So in other words, parents have authority over children here. And it doesn't matter how old you are. Your parents could be 90, you could be 60. They still have some sort of authority over you. But in that place, in that paradise, that authority is gone. That earthly relationship is gone. The relationship is more like a very dear friend, a very close friend that you love very much. So there's not an earthly authority system of parent and child, or husband and wife, or brother and sister. Instead, it's more of a very close and loving friendship. And to me, that was very striking, because our communication while he was here on the planet was definitely one of father to son. But in this context, in his location now, that tie is no longer there. That authority no longer exists. We were talking as equals. And this also ties in to some of the gospel message about what happens to married couples in the afterlife. If you remember, Jesus stated that there is no sexual congress in the afterlife. There is no sex in paradise because things are different. And I think I fully understand what he was trying to say at this point, because in that reality, we are beings of light. We are beings of a vibration. We don't have a physical nature to us, at least not like it is here in this third dimension. In that location, things are much different. You'll recognize your loved ones. They'll be easily recognizable. But some of the earthly aspects of our relationships will not be present. Authority, the authority that I just spoke of, will not be the same. And sex will not be in existence in that realm, because again, sex is a physical act of flesh, and in that realm there is no flesh. We are constructed of what I believe to be light. So you can imagine my surprise a couple of years back when I am coming out of a sleepful state and end up discussing current events with my dad in front of his mansion several years after he had passed away from this planet. I know a lot of people would say that that is an insane thing to experience, but I would challenge those folks to prove me wrong. I would challenge the naysayers and the scoffers out there to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is nothing else besides this reality right here. And as soon as they can do that, then I'll be happy to listen to what they have to say. To those of you who believe and to those who are unsure, however, I would say this. If you would want to be in a position to have this kind of experience yourself, I can't tell you steps to take in order to guarantee that it actually happens. In other words, I can't say, well, wash your hands at 2 a.m. and take a certain vitamin or supplement and then light a candle this way. It doesn't work that way. What I would suggest instead is to work on raising your vibration. Raising your vibration to match the state of the vibration in paradise. And what does that mean? Well, that means trying to work on being more compassionate, trying to work on being more forgiving, to being more loving. This doesn't mean you have to be some sort of cartoon or Ned Flanders or Mr. or Miss Perfect. What this means, though, is that you consciously work to raise your vibration, to work on compassion, to work on forgiveness, and to work on loving your neighbor, and probably most importantly, loving yourself. If you can do those things, then you'll be in a position to have a similar experience to the one I had. So this experience, getting back to the story, lasted, from what I can tell, about 10 minutes. And as I said before, we had a conversation based on current events at that time. Events that had happened years after my dad had passed away. And it was a very striking experience and a life-changing experience. What these experiences have done has changed my life. And I can't say that I'm some sort of perfect creation or, again, some sort of cartoon. What I can say, however, is that I am diligently working to raise my vibration, to become a better person, to learn compassion, to try and be more forgiving, not only of others, but of myself as well. So for the believers out there, I recommend you work on those things. If you want to have similar experiences, you need to work on aligning yourself to the vibration of that place, whatever you want to call it, heaven, paradise, the afterlife, the fifth dimension, whatever. If you want to get a glimpse of it, then you need to work on yourself here in this third dimension. And I want to reiterate that what Christ discussed in the New Testament is 1000% truth. I know a lot of people don't like churches. I know a lot of people don't trust the churches. The content of that New Testament, as far as Christ discussing the afterlife, is 1000% truth. So look into it, think about it, meditate on it, and pray about it. But that is my testimony. As a believer in Jesus Christ, I can say for sure there is an afterlife, there is a heaven, and I've had contact with loved ones, and the best way to experience it is to go to work right here and become a better person. I hope you found some value and enjoyment out of this testimony. Once again, my name is Kevin Newsom. I'm coming to you from Houston, Texas, and I want to say God bless you whenever and wherever you're at. Talk to you next time. Bye.